You're gonna have a good class. So good, so good. We are here together. What it should be the last class of the 8 verses in the way of like in the mind training, in the way of like really doing it. But next week, so as I said, I think it was Tuesday we talked about it. So next week is going to be the last class of that Tuesday, but not really last in the way that is actually we're just beginning, right? So, but that class we're going to continue in November after our pilgrimage. So this class we're going to do it next Thursday. We're going to still do one class, but we're going to do probably a practice, a Chenrezig practice. That in that Chenrezig practice, there is the 8 verses. So we're going to try to unify it all and do it together. So it's going to be a nice practice day. And then this Sunday, it might be the last Sunday, but it's depending on Venerable Tendron. So if Venerable Tendron can make it next Sunday, then this is gonna be my last Sunday. If not, then the next one on the 5th. Yes, I think it's 5th, isn't it?
Yes, the 5th.
Then I will try to jump in. So this is gonna be, and then of course, but because we're gonna go to the pilgrimage, Jack is going to the pilgrimage. So you guys are all aspiring pilgrims.
Last Thursday.
What
I
what date are you leaving for that?
10th, 11th, I think they are leaving, something like that. 10th,
Yes.
the Friday the 10th. Bob, I couldn't hear you. It was very. No, I don't know why it's not coming. Maybe you have headsets or something.
Are you good?
No.
No, don't know why. No.
Oh, he's muted. No, he's not.
Yeah. Do you want to write on the chat? No, we can't. We still can't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. We have no idea what you said, but we are dying to hear what you have to say. Okay, so don't stay the entire teaching without telling me your questions. Okay, so that's not good. You, out of all the people here, cannot have yourself not talking. Okay, otherwise, who's there to save me from myself and asking questions? So you need to save me. Okay, so that's very good. This was a little bit of admin homework. So we're still gonna see each other this week on Sunday. And then next week we still have meditations in the mornings and Tuesdays and Thursday. Okay, next week. And then might be it. So we see. So good, then we are here. So let's start, with our finally 4 months to do 8 verses. So we finally did it. You guys all win a little card say, you have been very patient. At least out of these 8 verses, definitely you guys develop patience. So that is already one of them. Is very good. But then to make sure that we remember the intention why we decided to do these classes, at least from my side, was because the 8 verses is such an important uh, really text to inspire us to develop. That is the main goal of it, to develop bodhicitta, to develop the mind of enlightenment, the awakened mind, as we say. Why is it called the awakened mind or the mind of enlightenment? Because it is the cause, the principal cause for our own enlightenment, right? If we don't have bodhicitta, we say that the Buddhas, they came because of the bodhisattvas, right? They came from bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas came from bodhicitta. Bodhicitta came from, great compassion. Great compassion came from compassion itself. So in that way, and then we can even go further, so we can talk about self-compassion, or in another word, renunciation, right? So, and renunciation means understanding that we want to be free from suffering and what the suffering and the cause of suffering are. So for that is the beginning. So that is, we go back to the first teachings of the Buddha, right? The truth, the Four Noble Truths, and the truth of suffering. So that is so important that we understand that we understand that entire path. That, and because of that, the mind of enlightenment is that wish to guess what? Why is it called the mind of enlightenment? Because it's a wish. It's a wish. It's to the development of our own wish to achieve enlightenment, to be enlightened, to be a Buddha. If we don't have that wish, we don't become a Buddha. How about that? Easy. If we don't develop that wish to become a Buddha, there's no way we can become a Buddha, right? So the text is telling us, like, if you want, you can. You can become a Buddha, but for that you need to develop that wish. And for you to develop that wish, you need to be able to train your mind into not allowing the sufferings and the causes of your sufferings, to just run the show. Let's say like this. They cannot be the pilot. They cannot be the controller, the conductor of your life. Otherwise, you will never gonna be able to achieve enlightenment. So that is why it's such a text that was able to bring to us very, I'm not gonna say mundane as in a kind of like seeing it from a bad point of view, but on a very ordinary way, right? Because it helps us to really see, oh yes, when that happens, I don't need to follow that mind, that autopilot, that kind of like controlled mind in that way. I don't have to. There is another option. Because that is what is normally missing to us. In our daily lives, what is missing is that we are not, nobody teaches us that there is another way to live and another way to respond to whatever happens to us, right? There's another way to achieve our innermost goal, which is to be happy and to not suffer. And that is why also achieving enlightenment fulfills that, right? Why? Because enlightenment is exactly the opposite mind of what we have now, which is a mind of suffering and a mind that cannot find happiness, right? So it's like, that's what we want. So then the mind, that is what we need to really familiarize ourselves again and again and again and again, that we want that. And we not only want, but we can achieve that. So that is why, this text is so important for us to study again and again, and really to ingrain that wish within ourselves from all of the things that we do in our lives, that we ingrain that wish of like, oh wow, I can live my life in the autopilot and just following, tagging along with my behaviors and my patterns and my habits, or I can transform them into something that can bring me to that state of no more suffering and perfection of my happiness. That is the state of enlightenment. So that wish to wanting to achieve enlightenment, bodhicitta, is the mind that we want to cultivate in ourselves again and again and again and again. And Rinpoche always says, if we cultivate that mind, then no choice besides enlightenment. No choice. Because if we cultivate that mind, then the result is going to be that. Exactly the same thing is that if we cultivate, an apple seed, there's only apples that can come from there. Nothing else, right? So like that. Same principle. Same idea. So that's what we need to develop in ourselves. We really need to develop that wish to wanting to achieve enlightenment. So that is why this text was so important. Okay? So for us to, before we start this kind of like, I'm just going to go a little bit more into the 8th verse, and then we can just go, well, we're going to do that also next week. We're gonna go through them, through each of them. But today I want to go a little bit, because I feel that we talked a little bit more, but I really need to talk about, the 8th verse, because it's the juicy one. It's like the one that is like all the flavors there. When you eat, It's like Bobby's eating now and he's saving the best part for at the end. He's just like living, like that little thing that we like the most, so we can. It's like that. It's the eighth verse. It's the juicy part. It's the essence of all of the eight. The other verses is there in the eighth verse. So that is the eighth verse. So that is why it's kind of like, I need to talk again and again and again and again. And we're going to talk about it again today. But before we do that, let's not only, learn and think about, oh, yes, very good that what Calden is saying about developing bodhicitta and wanting to help, myself to achieve my enlightenment so I can help others. Wow, 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 very good. But then I don't do it. So let's start with this. So let's create that motivation. Okay? So let's really start to create that motivation within ourselves. So we always start any not only this practice, because we are here in a Buddhist kind of like Dharma center, and we're gonna learn about bodhicitta, that we need to think that, oh yes, when I am in the Buddhist center, I should think about bodhicitta and I need to create that intention. Not like this, right? Actually, every day you go to a meeting, you go to the supermarket, you go to put gas, you go to do anything, you do it, you think about bodhicitta before you do it, right? And then everything that you do becomes a cause and a condition for your enlightenment. How about that? Then everything we do is getting us closer to enlightenment. Rinpoche had these beautiful texts saying, like, live with compassion, walk with compassion, work with compassion, do everything with compassion, with that idea of bodhicitta, right? Compassion leading towards bodhicitta. Remember I said compassion goes to great compassion, goes to bodhicitta, goes to bodhisattva, becomes Buddha, like this. So if we do that, everything that we do in our lives becomes like a direct path, direct, like a 95, 95 over there, direct path, from one place to another. That is what it is. It becomes 95 for us, so everything that we do, so we really try to create that, embed that wish within ourselves, right? So whatever we are gonna listen, whatever we're gonna talk, whatever we're gonna question, whatever we're gonna kind of like contemplate and meditate, made we be able to create, the seeds, the like, and the root, let's say like that, in our mind, of that enlightened state, that wish to become enlightened. And why we want to become enlightened? Just because we want to be happy and not suffer just for ourselves? No, because we know that the way to achieve that is by helping others to also achieve enlightenment. So for us to achieve enlightenment, we need to help others to achieve enlightenment. But then for us to help others to achieve enlightenment, we need to achieve enlightenment. You understand? Like that. So that is like the idea. So that's what we need to really develop in ourselves. We need to develop that wish so we can benefit others. Okay? So that is the most important thing. And to help us do that, we're gonna do aspirational prayers. Prayers, they are called, I already said that I don't like this word prayers, because prayers normally is like we're praying to God and someone to come and save us and do things like that. Unfortunately, Buddhism doesn't work like that. We cannot pray. We can pray, for all the Buddhas, but if you just say, Buddha, please help me, but then we don't do anything, we don't put our minds into compassion, into bodhicitta, they cannot do anything, right? So actually, prayers here has the idea of we helping us is a support, is a supporting mechanism to help us inspire ourselves, not others, ourselves. We are inspiring ourselves to develop bodhicitta, right? Through the prayers that was written by someone that only wanted us to achieve that enlightenment state, right? All the teachers, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So that is what we are trying to do. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Yes? Do you understand that? So that is very important, that we don't kind of like go into this idea that like prayers will do only the trick. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, said something so nice. He said prayers are very important, but prayers alone doesn't do the work, right? It's not enough. So we need to actually transform the mind through remembering and supporting ourselves in getting inspired by prayers, but then applying that wish in everything that we do in our lives. Okay? That is the idea. So the prayers are just a supporting mechanism if we want. Otherwise, it can become like a boring thing that we just go and say blah 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 blah, just become blah 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 blah. Then it doesn't make anything. Okay? So that is the most important thing, that we remember that it is to inspire ourselves to develop the mind of enlightenment. Okay? So let me check if I have here the prayers. Otherwise, I'm gonna put all of the responsibility on Jack. I think I have it. Wait. Essential Buddhist prayers. There we are. 35 maybe? Yes, 34. Okay. Uh, mm, mm. Enable scrolling. Okay. Here, there we are. I don't know why it's not going to appear for me, but I'm gonna put it like this. There we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So the four immeasurable thoughts. Actually, I wanted to find, where did I find it recently? And the prayers that I wanted. Okay, I'm gonna try for next week for us to have it, because there is the four immeasurables, and then there's called thoughts, and then it's a little bit longer version because we go through them a little bit longer. So I'm gonna try to check if we can do that next week as well. Okay, because that is important. So these four immeasurable thoughts, they are kind of like the necessary thoughts that we need to create to give us that, let's say, basis. Is like they are the components that helps us to develop further and further that compassion, that great compassion, that love, that that equanimity, that joy, that kind of like will become our wish to help all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment. And therefore we need to achieve enlightenment ourselves. So that is the basis for that, right? To open our hearts for that. So that's why we always start with them. Okay, so we can just have a moment for that, really trying to establish that motivation within ourselves. Thinking about our own sufferings, the sufferings of others, and the potential for our own happiness, and the potential to help others to also find happiness. And so for that, we're going to do the prayers. May all sentient beings have happiness and be
Happiness and
causes of
causes of
happiness.
happiness.
May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. That is very special already that we do that. And now we're going to take refuge and generate the enlightened mind. So, like refuge means that right now we take refuge in everything else besides the things that can help us to find happiness and to not suffer. We take a refuge in, in drinking, in burrito, in taco, in Instagram, in Netflix, in raisins, in in air conditioning. All of these we take refuge on. Okay, so it's really important that we really take refuge in something that can help us develop a lasting, peaceful, full of qualities type of happiness. And the only ones that can actually do that is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, or the Sangha in this way. And the Buddha is because he has done that. So he's kind of like become the guide to teach us the way. The Dharma is the teachings in itself, the methods, what we actually need to develop within ourselves so we can achieve that. And then, the Supreme Assembly are the supporters, those that really help us to accomplish, the practice of the Dharma. And why we are doing that? Well, we are doing that by starting, to create merits, to create virtuous minds. And we do that by listening to these blah, 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 that can become Dharma. They can be Dharma words, but it can become Dharma if I put the intention, to help you to achieve enlightenment, and you put the intention to listen to it as a method for you to achieve enlightenment, then this becomes Dharma. Otherwise, no Dharma. Okay? So we say, may we become a Buddha so we can become, the best version of ourselves with all the power, all the wisdom, all the compassion, all the possibilities of manifesting ourselves in the best way possible to benefit all sentient beings. And benefit here means achieving enlightenment, that they can also achieve enlightenment. Okay? That is what we're going to do. So that's what we do. And for those that are already, familiar with Buddhism and think that Buddhism is their path and they want to really use that so they can visualize the Buddha in front of you and, surrounded by the lineage masters and especially your own teachers as a source of inspiration. We are not like, adoring them as a god, as a savior, but actually as an inspiration. And they are made of light, beautiful golden light, shining rays of light for ourselves. And also we visualize all sentient beings around us, all the people we love, all the people that we don't know, and especially our enemies, those that we have difficulties with. And when we do these prayers, also we see that those lights of the Buddhas wanting to help us is also helping all sentient beings. Okay? So we can do that visualization while we do this prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Very good. No, not swift return prayer yet. So we can come back and then we can start, really thinking about, let me see if I can find the 8th verse here. I think I have it. Oh yeah. So I can open again and then share, and then we're going to talk about the 8th verse. But anyone remembers a little bit about the 8th verse, what we was talking about? Oh, now it went. Okay, so I thought we can share like this. Yeah, can you see it? Yes? Jack, can you guys see it?
Hold on, I had us on mute while we were doing the prayers. Yes, we can see it. Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. Because I'm sharing, so I cannot see also you guys. So just for that. So, we were been talking. One of the things that is so important for us to understand, I think, okay, I feel that if I haven't said that enough, it's all my fault. It's nothing to do with you guys. But as I was saying in the beginning, the first teachings of the Buddha was the idea of the Four Noble Truths, right? And the Four Noble Truths, they are the teachings that talk about the first truth is about recognizing suffering and understanding what suffering means. Because if we don't recognize suffering, we don't need a spiritual path and don't need to do anything. If we are just enjoying ourselves, we can just, continue to be where we are and we don't need to ask ourselves anything. We just stay as we are, okay? So the Buddha said, okay, if you don't think about then suffering, if you don't understand or recognize your own suffering, then you cannot move on. So that's why it's so important for us to really start with the recognition of suffering. And then the Buddha goes, because the Buddha is a cool dude, he said, okay, yes, there is suffering, but there is also causes for it, right? So the more you start to understand that, like, you have a sickness, then you need to know what are the causes of the sickness. So then the Buddha said, okay, the real causes of suffering are three, if we're going to put it in a way. The first one is the most gross one, which is what we call our manifested negative, disturbing emotions. Anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, all of these. And all the nuances of these, okay? All of the different colors of anger, like frustration, like, when we got frustrated, when we got kind of like upset, when we got all of these different types against others, like rage as well, all of these. But also we have different types of anger towards oneself, right? We talk also about suffering, like anger towards oneself, like depression, like low self-esteem, all of that. So these are kind of like the manifested emotions, negative emotions that makes our body disturbs, mind disturbs, and all of that. Then out of these, what happens to us is that we get confused by these mental states, these disturbing mental states. We get very disturbed. So we act with our body, speech, and also our mind. And therefore, we create patterns. We create habits with our body, speech, and mind to react, towards things, towards situations. So when we're doing like that, it means that, we are not actually being able to be happy because we are suffering, because we are totally disturbed by these negative emotions. And then when we have the negative habits or the karma, as we say, because we are under the influence of these negative emotions, we create then these habits of body, speech, and mind. Then we suffer again and again and again and again and again, right? We create that loop, infinite loop of suffering that we just continue, creating suffering and suffering and suffering and suffering and suffering and suffering. We experience suffer and we create more. We experience suffer and we create more, like that. So then the Buddha said, I am very nice because, yes, there is suffering. So there is a disease. Yes, there is a cause for it, and the main cause for it is not only, the negative emotions, is not only the habitual patterns or the karma, but is actually our misunderstanding on how things exist and how we see them, right? Is that difference between the way things exist and the way things appears to us. Okay? So that becomes the main cause of our suffering. Everything comes from that main cause. So the Buddha, very nice guy, explained that. And then he said, guess what? There is suffering, there is a cause for suffering, but there's also a cessation for those causes. And if there is a cessation for these causes, means that you guys can be free from them, right? That is the idea. So then the Buddha mainly thought two types of cessation, what we call temporary cessations and full complete cessation. Okay? So the temporary sensations, we would call them antidotes. Yes? So antidotes are considered what we call temporary cessations. What does it mean? Is that they don't actually completely cessate those sufferings and the causes of suffering, but they help us to subdue temporary or decrease or diminish those sufferings and the cause of sufferings. For example, when we are angry, we can practice patience. Practicing patience is going to help us temporarily to decrease and eliminate that manifested suffering that is happening in that moment, right? And the more we practice patience, the less space, let's say like that, we give for anger to manifest in our minds. Are we clear? Are we okay so far? I know we have Noel over here with us, and he's new, but but he has been to the Sunday classes that I've seen him on the Sunday class, so I know him over there. But if it makes sense, he's our thermometer today. If it makes sense for him, it should make sense for all of you, okay? Especially to Bob, who has been listening to this blah 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 of me so many times. So it's very important that we understand that those antidotes, they're considered like temporary cessations. Guess what? The 8 verses up into from the verse number 1 to verse number 7, what it was teaching us, what type of cessation? Temporary cessations, right? Because he was talking about the different types of cessations that we can establish, that we can develop, that we can nourish, that we can use in those situations that the verses are referring to, right? When someone hurts us, when someone let mistreat us, when someone abuses us, when someone's kind of like scold us, or is like a like wicked in nature, right? We said all of these things. So all of those antidotes that we were talking about, they were telling us in a temporary way. They were helping us to subdue our sufferings in a temporary way. That means that they are bad. That means that we should not do that. No way. Actually, is the reason why it's 7 verses out of 1 verse that is not temporary, is because guess what? We need the temporary verses a lot, the temporary antidotes, the temporary sensations a lot. Okay? Why we need it? Because I can only talk for me, right? But that's how our minds work 24/7, right? We've under the influence of these negative emotions all the time, like being, disturbed by them. Deb has a question, so she's gonna save us.
Well, I think you said last week that the first 7 verses give us a method, but as long as we don't, as long as we have a mistaken sense of self, we're still going to be using praise and the 8 worldly concerns, so that it corrupts what we're doing in the practice of this first 7 verses. But it's still antidotes, even if we are doing it things for reputation and praise and gain and all that stuff.
Yes, because I think here are 2 different things. I understand what you're saying, and then one thing that you're saying is that actually, if you are doing that in the idea of like good reputation and all of that, then they are not necessarily taking out the suffering that we are talking about. They are creating more suffering. But if we do practice them, for example, if we do try to practice patience, even if we practice patience for a little while and we say, oh, look at me, how I am a nice patient person, but we are already decreasing the anger that was there, and therefore it is an antidote, right? Antidotes don't need to be perfect, okay? Antidotes cannot actually be perfect because they need the other ultimate antidote, which is wisdom, right? Because that is actually the most important aspect. Those are the 2 types of cessations that we have. The temporary ones, like what we were discussing, and then there's the ultimate cessation, right? So the cessation that actually, if we apply to our minds, eliminates all of the suffering and the cause of suffering, right? And that is only able to be achieved by wisdom, developing wisdom, right? So that is why it's kind of what I was saying is together, and Deb, because Deb paid so much attention. She pays more attention to what I said than what I say. So that's great, So it's exactly that idea that until we don't have wisdom, permeating everything, in our minds, those sensations are not only going to be not only temporary, but not efficient into completely uproot, right? They can't do that. But guess what, Deb? I have bad news in a way. I'm not going to say that it's bad news but it's like, even wisdom, it's also not just like, oh, I got it, then that's it, right? It's actually the way we develop wisdom is that we contemplate, we learn, we contemplate, we meditate, and then we go and we have some kind of like of understanding of what? Of how things exist, remember? Because that is the wisdom, the main cause of the suffering is our misconception about how things exist and how they appear to us, right? So then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to, with wisdom, develop understanding of how things exist more and more, and understanding the wrong misperception, right? Recognizing the misperception and seeing, oh, that misperception is empty of what is actually is. It's not like that, right? It doesn't exist in this way because things exist in this way. So I go unifying that, okay? So the more I go developing that wisdom, the more I go developing, it's not that it's like just once. I just don't develop wisdom once. So the more I go developing that, that means that my other antidotes, they start to become more efficient, right? Because I have a better understanding. So that means that I am able to then practice patience in a better way, practice love in a better way, practice compassion in a better way, so I go kind of like the more they become like more authentic or like more beneficial, right? They also help our minds to become calmer. And what we say, we accumulate more merits, more virtuous minds, right? So that is what it means. The more we accumulate these virtuous minds, the easier it becomes for us to then penetrate our minds into the wisdom, right? So how does it actually work? And I'm here talking about the bodhisattva path. You know how the bodhisattva path is that once you start to develop wisdom, you start to kind of like, you go, you meditate, and you go out of that meditation, and then you practice the 7 verses, let's say like that, with that understanding of your wisdom that you accumulated in meditation. Yes? Does it make sense what I'm trying to say now? And then you go, and that wisdom that you accumulated because you understand a bit better how things are and how things are not, my appearances are deceiving. You bring that understanding to your 8 verses, to your daily life, and then that will make that like accumulation of merits, as we say, because we're going to use those kindness, compassion, love, and all of that based on wisdom, right? As I was saying last week. And that these will create the basis for us to accumulate more virtuous minds, subduing more and more the negative tendencies. Therefore, the mind become even more calmer and more positive. And then we go back to meditation, and then we penetrate further, right? Until we are completely, almost there, eliminating completely all of the negativities, and we already accumulated so much virtuous mind that our minds are almost positive. And then we go to wisdom more and more, that those wrong appearances don't appear anymore. And then we don't have any more to worry because we just see a reality because we already know, and we are full of these positive emotions. And that together is what enlightenment actually means. Because you guys are very smart, so I can go deeper, explain like this. Bob is like, what is he talking about?
No.
Oh, we can
Can you
hear
hear me?
now. You can
Okay,
hear
yeah,
you.
no, I get it. I mean, it's like I always say, it's a lot.
Yes.
It's not
Yes,
for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart.
that's it. That's why you are here, because you're strong heart. So that is something that is really for us to understand, right? That kind of like those sensations, they have those different kind of levels. Yes. So those 2 levels are so important for us to understand, that we need to develop both of them, right? And this is why we call the two wings, the compassion or the method, or the, you know, the kind of like the merits wing, and then the wisdom, right? We say that we need to accumulate that, yeah. I know, and that we need to accumulate, you know, merit, and we need to accumulate virtues or positive mental states and wisdom. These are the two accumulations that we need to accumulate so we can achieve enlightenment. Yes?
Oh,
Does
I
it make
wasn't
sense?
sure. Why'd you say it's bad news? What's the bad news?
Well, I think the bad news was what a little bit of what Bob said, you know, in that way that is like it's quite a lot. It's like, you know, it's like it's not gonna be just like, wow, now I got what Calder was talking about, emptiness and, you know, things being in certain way and all of that, and I got it. No. Then once you actually realize that, then the path works, it starts, right?
When my friends ask me what I'm doing with my time, and I tell them that I'm trying to read and study about Buddhism because there's no pill to enlightenment.
Very good. This is it. That's exactly this, Bob. It's like there's no such thing as, like, you know, a pill for enlightenment, because it is a process. You know, it's like layers. That's why I like for to be a, let's say, you know, a visual. It's like layers, right? Of our confusion. So that's why we needed to go, you know, even on the bodhisattva path, when we go, you know, into the different bhumis, we call them, you know, bhumis are just mental states that are like when we have so much grass, like, you know, like this, and then we kind of like we practice patience, kindness, and love, and then we come with wisdom, and then these two say, oh yes, I understand. And then, you know, and then you go and you continue, and then you go like even down, you know, more subtle, more subtle, more subtle, till the mind is very subtle and very, and this goes openings the heart. So the more we do that, what is important in this, so we don't become obsessed with this bodhisattva path thinking, oh, I want to go into these bhumis and experience these nice feelings of getting, you know, no anger, no this and that. Actually, we need to remember that the reason why we're doing this is to help others. So that is why the bodhisattva, once he steps out of the meditation on emptiness, he goes out and he does what? Benefit others. He transforms himself in whatever ways is done, whatever ways most beneficial to help others. So his action is not just passive, sitting down, meditating, and then, oh yes, very good, and then go out, you know, and then just kind of like don't do anything. Like, no, it's like a constant coming back life after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime to help others, to support others, to do things for others. Why? To both, for two aspects: to help others and to accumulate merit, so we can continue helping others more and more and more and further and like more subtle, right? Until we achieve the mind of enlightenment, which is what we call the omniscient mind. And what is omniscience? Omniscience is so important that we understand, because it is the best tool or the best type of wisdom that we might be able to have, because the omniscient mind is the mind that actually sees everything as they are. So that means that, for example, what we are, it's a bunch of causes and conditions coming together, right? All of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our emotions, even everything that we do with our body, you know, kind of like everything that we have. Why I have a nose like this, why I have a mouth like this, why I have an eye like this. Everything was created by ourselves, right? We accumulated the causes for this to arise in this way. The Buddha can see everything. So the Buddha looks at you with the omniscient mind and say, oh, that person, to be able to achieve enlightenment, needs to do these, you know, didn't stop thinking about that, doing this. But guess what? If we don't see the Buddha as the Buddha, if someone comes to you and say, blah, 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 you should do that, you're going to punch them in the face, right? So the Buddha needs to be very skillful in the way that he's going to manifest that wisdom to help us, right? And that's why we say that the most important or the most efficient, let's say like this, in the way for us, as we are now, and especially in 2025, is manifesting as a teacher, right? because as a teacher, we are actually able to see, listen to the teachings and listen to these and all of that. And you start to say, oh, wow. And then we see the person embodying those qualities and those kind of like that wisdom. And then we say, it's possible and I want that. Right? So that is why it is the idea that we say that the teacher is the root of the path, right? Because without a teacher, we cannot do that. So then you guys need to just develop, accumulate a lot of good merits to find a good teacher, you know, because that's very important. That's why, you know, you need to find a proper teacher, you know, not me parrot, like like this, not like this, you know, a proper teacher that actually embodies all of these and have all of these qualities. So that is why we get inspired. Remember that I said in the beginning that the idea of this text is to develop our own wish to achieve enlightenment, right? That is the goal. So once we have and start to develop that connection with the teacher, what starts to arise in us is more and more that wish. That was when we start to know that we have found a teacher, right? Because it's like, wow, I can see that this person is not doing the work for me. This person is not gonna save me. This person is not about that, but this person inspires me to inspire myself to want to transform myself. That is the real teacher, right? Because the ultimate teacher, it's ourself, it's our own mind. So the outside teacher is just there, and I have no idea why I ended up going there, but I think it's very important that I'm saying that. It's really important that we understand that the teacher, the outside teacher, is just a vessel, let's say like that, right? That we might need for a few hundreds of thousands of lifetimes so we can actually, develop that wisdom, develop those methods, and then we can actually do the work for ourselves, by ourselves, right? So that is the idea. So don't think that the idea of the teacher, and especially me sitting here, and talking about teacher, blah, 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 is not about self kind of like proclaiming myself, but it's really to talk about that idea of the teacher is important because inspire ourselves to develop in ourselves the wish to achieve enlightenment. If that is happening, then yes. Even if the teacher doesn't see themselves as a teacher, even if the teacher doesn't see you as a student, you see the teacher as a teacher. That is the most important, right? That is only what it actually matters, right? So you develop that and say, wow, I'm so inspired. And then everything that this person does, you see it with that idea of like, this person is helping me to see myself so I can achieve enlightenment, So that's what I also want. I still remember that, it took me, unfortunately, I had to wait for Rinpoche to die so this idea can really sink into my heart, right? To say, wow, Rinpoche was not there, to save me, but actually it's to guide me towards myself, right? So that is the idea. So that's what we really need to develop. So for that, we need the wisdom, and then we need the methods, right? So the methods and these two things, of course, the teacher will teach us, but we need to apply it in our minds. So that is why we need, the two types of antidotes. We need the temporary and the ultimate antidote. Otherwise, there's no way we can achieve that. There's no way. So that is the most important thing that I feel about like really explaining these 8 verses is explaining in this broader context of the Buddhist path, right? Of understanding how those paths, they are, how perfect in some ways the Buddhist path is, and how perfect the text is, because actually, if you perfect this text, if you perfect the 8 verses, you perfect the entire Buddhist path. You achieve enlightenment, right? Because, why? Because it has the two things, the two components, the temporary and the ultimate sensations, right? So these two things. So there is one more important than the other. In a way, we're going to say that wisdom is the main thing, right? Is the main thing that we need to develop. is the essence. That's why it's the heart of, I'm gonna give in just before I go actually to to Florida in November. I'm gonna give a 2 days Heart Sutra retreat here in Brazil. They asked me, crazy people, they asked me to give a Heart Sutra retreat. I'm gonna do a Heart Sutra retreat. Heart Sutra is the sutra that talks about the essence of the teachings of the Buddha, which is the sutra that explains emptiness, that explains how things exist, that explains how we develop that mind that realizes how things are. So that is why like wisdom is the essence, but there is only wisdom alone is not enough for us to achieve enlightenment, right? Actually, only wisdom is going to bring us to just wanting to be free from suffering, and we're going to forget about everybody. So, actually developing the methods, compassion, love, kindness, patience, it helps us to understand that the reason why we're doing it, that the reason why, as Bob said, we are going through these hardships, of not of the faint heart, is because we want to help others. So then, if we have that in mind, becomes easy, bearable. Everything becomes joyful and amazing and like, yes, it's hardcore, but I'm so happy I can do that. Today is one of my best monk friends. I have two monk friends, no best friends, monk friend, best friends. And then one of them is his birthday today, and we were talking, but actually it was not a talking because he's doing retreat. He was doing retreat, and then he cannot talk. But then I called him anyway because I'm cheeky. So then I call him, and he just like this, and he could not talk, so I could just do a monologue. I did a monk stand-up comedy monologue for him. So I was talking about that, and then I was talking about, and I said, if I need to wish you something, I wish you to always find the Dharma and always find the teacher, because if we actually so fortunate that we have found the Dharma and the teachers, because with that our lives become meaningful. Because with that we know what we want to achieve, and we know what we want to develop, and everything in our lives can become Dharma, can become a source of us achieving our goal of wanting to be happy and not suffer, and doing that to help others. So life becomes easy. If you have bodhicitta, everything becomes easy. You don't have any more difficulties in choosing, oh, should I do this, should I do that? Oh, you just know, because it's coming from bodhicitta. So you just know whatever is most beneficial to help others, right? And even in bodhicitta, when we develop bodhicitta, we have the two types of bodhicitta. I also talked about that at some point in these 4 months. We talked about the relative bodhicitta and the ultimate bodhicitta, right? And these are also the two parts. So when we talk about bodhicitta, we are also talking about, in order to achieve enlightenment, I need to develop compassion, love, kindness, these temporary antidotes, and I need to develop the wisdom, right? That is the basis. I need that. I need these two things. So if I don't have that, then there is no possibility of us accomplishing our goal. So then the more we develop, the more we go finding the balance of these, right? Right now it's hard for us to maybe balance these things. Might feel overwhelmed of like, oh, talking about enlightenment and talking about emptiness and talking about wisdom and all of these, and then talking about love, compassion might be easier. So we just go from what it is, but we need to unify that. So that's why Rinpoche always said, Rinpoche said something very, very wise that I really, 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 I think enjoyed. Rinpoche said we should always do at least a little bit of reading or contemplation or meditation on emptiness. If someone wants to decide what to do in their practice, I want to have a daily practice. Rinpoche used to say, just, try to study, contemplate, and meditate on emptiness. And then live your life with bodhicitta the rest of the time. That's it, right? With the aspiration of bodhicitta. Then your life is with those. And then the more you can study, the more you can contemplate, the more you can meditate on emptiness, the better or the most efficient these will help you to develop your bodhicitta in your daily life. And the more you develop your bodhicitta in your daily life, the more it will help you to have, that wisdom, develop that wisdom and that understanding. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Charles, does it
Yes.
make sense?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, I could feel that you had a question.
I feel it's more of an observation, but I think what you're saying is great. And it often in our discussions and conversations about karma,
Mhm.
I have a lot of difficulty with it because almost immediately in our minds, in the Western mind,
Mhm.
there isn't bodhicitta in those discussions. Very quickly, this happens. It reinforces a sense of separation between people. That's their karma. These people did this in the past, and now this is what's ripening, and it's not like we're sort of looking at everybody caught in these cycles of suffering, which is really what it is.
Mhm.
It's not rooted in compassion. That's what I find. That's why it's so difficult. I'm sure it's difficult to teach karma, and it's difficult to understand it because immediately our mind goes to blame and they're
Yes,
getting theirs.
absolutely. Yes,
And
yes, yes,
so
yes, yes.
how can we introduce more of that sense of bodhicitta and
In karma.
yeah, and the fact that it's not that these group of people over here are they're seeing their karma ripening or now they're the perpetrators before they were the victims,
Yes,
all
yes,
of
yes.
us are implicated, I feel,
Yes.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Very good.
So
Very, very
anyway,
good. Yes. No, very good. Thank you. You should open your mic more times and ask more questions like this. You're very good question. But I think just to put into context, into the sense of understanding that the reason why we normally might have the tendency or the perception, I'm going to use that word, that karma doesn't have that understanding of compassion is because if you actually look into the Lam Rim, karma is talking about on the first level of intention. And the first level of intention is self liberation, renunciation. I want to be free from suffering, right? So that is actually the goal of understanding karma. The goal of understanding karma in that context is to say, if I don't follow the law of cause and effect, if I don't follow the law that actually, if I create a negative intention, I'm gonna have suffering. If I don't create a positive intention, I'm not gonna if I create a positive intention, I'm gonna have, happiness. If I don't have that intention, I will not be able to actually free myself from the suffering, right? So I'm gonna be entangled in that kind of like cause and effect relationship without understanding how it works and therefore not being able to be free from that. So that is mainly why normally it has a tendency to see, because the other aspect of it that I can kind of like come to mind right now is the karma is a unique thing in that way, right? It's like unique in the sense that karma only happens or only arises in the mind of the person, right? And the mind is an individual continuum. I can only have, even though we might have what we call collective karma doesn't mean that we are sharing karma. We just have similar karma. It's not the same because karma can never be the same for other people, but they were collectively sharing that, right? So that is very kind of like important that we understand that it is an individual, let's say, experience and an individual, like, let's say, cause and effect relationship. Having said that, which I think it is just good to kind of like, put into perspective that maybe that is the reason, maybe the perception. Once we start going towards, understanding more the other aspects, right? Of the Lam Rim. So the first one is just like, I just want to have a good rebirth. That is the first Lam Rim kind of like motivation. Then I say, I want to renounce, I want to be free from everything. So that's the middle scope. And then the third one is bodhicitta, right? So the third one is like developing. So then when we have that understanding, when we start studying the Lam Rim again, if we have that as a basis, everything should be permeated by that basis of understanding bodhicitta. So understanding that the way for myself to actually work on my mind, understanding karma, actually should be the most emphasis of our compassion or bodhicitta action, would be to help others to understand karma. Actually, like compassion, if you would really talk about, self-compassion, it means I want to be free from suffering, let's say like that, right? That is the, but actually, if we're gonna talk about compassion in itself, it would be to help others to be free from suffering as well, by understanding karma. We don't put that by understanding karma, but really is the essence. Karma and emptiness are the main things, to be honest, right? So cause and effect, and that way things exist, because why? Because karma is how the way things exist. So if we understand that, we are already understanding quite a lot of the root of our suffering. And then when we start to understand that the appearances that we have are not correct, then with that understanding with karma, great, we go deep into the wisdom, right? So completely agree with you. Completely agree with you, right? So that's why, it is so different, because that's like the Tuesday classes. I'm trying to introduce a little bit, just, I'm not giving excuse here, okay? But I'm just saying that once we start just introducing the topic, it's sometimes, if people don't have that understanding of bodhicitta, right? We understand, we can try to just do it on a more self-liberating way, because the other possibility that normally happens, it's the movement that I am starting, right? Called Buddhist Against Stupid Compassion, right? Because then it starts to become stupid compassion in relation to karma, right? Because people start to think that they can actually change other people's karma, save other people's from their karma, and there's no such thing, right? So I agree with you completely 100% that it has to have, when we have that understanding of a bodhicitta, that actually helping others to work with their mind so that they can stop, creating negative karma, and they can increase, that will be the most beneficial, right? Way of manifesting that compassion. But normally is not. And I guess what, and I really appreciate what you said about that. We kind of like start almost like pointing fingers, right? That what it becomes, and in that case doesn't help so much. But if we actually try to understand that, oh, the more I understand the karma for myself, the more I see myself, the more, like next week we're going to talk about the 10 virtues and the 10 of virtues, and we're going to talk a little bit about, the 4 results of karma, right? When we start to understand the 4 results of karma, how they actually manifest, then we start to pay attention to it even more. But then we need to bring that to others, we need to try to bring that and to help them. Lama Yeshe used to say something amazing. For example, he used to say something about an example of that, what he just said. If you have someone that is just talking nonsense, or just like, talking a lot of anger, or like angry things and all of that, you should try by understanding karma, you should try your best to help them stop, even if it is to punch them. Right? Lamesh used to say that. Because it comes from the understanding of karma. Because that person is just creating and increasing, right? That habit, that pattern, creating those seeds. But that, I have to say, it's very hard. Very hard sometimes. Very hard. But I think that you're completely right. Do you want to comment on what I comment?
No, what you say, it helps me understand
Yeah.
the purpose behind teaching it. Absolutely, it is obviously a very compassionate thing to teach it, and it's so fundamental, I think, to the teachings. But because it brings in a sense of accountability, which I think is so important, right? But at the same time, it's, from what I've been taught, it's an extremely hidden phenomena, right?
Exactly.
And so to me, it almost seems like it's linked to omniscience to really
In a way,
understand.
it is. Yeah, it is definitely linked to omniscience. That's why I said, that is karma and emptiness, are the two things that actually, if you understand one, you're going to understand the other more and more, right? Which are the basis for your enlightenment. And once you have enlightenment, is the only time that you can actually have access, let's say like that, to the entire matrix of a karma, right? Is the only moment. And what I was explaining earlier about the omniscience, right? That how kind of like the omniscient mind can see what is the best for each person into the sense of the karma, what is necessary for them to purify their karma and accumulate positive karma, right? So you're completely right in that sense.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is very good, Karma. I love it. We're bringing together Tuesday class and Thursday class, boom, and becoming one thing. That is the best. When we start to do these connections in our minds, right? Because that is exactly the mind that we need to create, in order to develop those mental states and understandings of the Dharma, that the more we actually make these connections and we understand, how one thing builds up and how one thing actually follows the other, how build up or how influences and all of that, that's the best. Best, 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 best. So thank you so much. I think you're going to have a next year, I'm going to put you to give some revision classes. That's what we're gonna do. So what we're gonna do. So that is really. I think that the most important aspect of today was really to understand about the 8 verses, those two aspects. Because sometimes it doesn't become clear, and of course, not only because I'm a mess, but because many times, the way people teach they just go into the verses in itself, but they don't put it in this bigger picture, that actually the first 7 verses, they are temporary antidotes, and then temporary, they're like cessations, and the last one is the main one. But it doesn't mean that just because it's the main one, the development of wisdom, it doesn't necessarily mean that is, oh, okay, it's just like one. Or actually, we should do the more, we should try to do both, right? As we was discussing now, we need to balance these two things. Okay, any other questions or any other doubts? Today I think we're gonna, because next week, so what we're going to do next week is that we're going to go through them, and we're going to do a meditation on them, and and a meditation on Chenrezig, which is the embodiment of compassion, right? So we're going to really try to put into action that. We're really going to try to kind of like, when we talk about, it's almost like a toned land meditation, I think, because we're going to go in through each of these, and then we're going to be really aspiring to perform, to be, to manifest, what the essence of each of those verses tell, right? And with that inspiration of Chenrezig, which is the manifestation of all the compassion in the world, right? And I think it's so important. I think what Tal brought now is very important, that we, now that we have that understanding of bodhicitta, that's why Rinpoche was so emphasizing that as well. It's like our lives need to be based and in bed with that, no? Nourished by it, moisturized by it. I don't know if that's a good word, but that's a word that I'm creating, like our minds should always be there with that compassion, because that is the basis, right? And that not only, as I say, stupid compassion, but mainly bodhicitta, right? Bodhicitta is the mind, that the more we familiarize, the more we create that connect, the more we actually develop in ourselves, the more we actually bring us to enlightenment. Okay? So that is the idea. That is very much, I think, the essence of it. So any other questions or any other doubts? I hope that these kind of like classes were in any way beneficial, but I think, they definitely created some imprints, for all of you that have been here almost every Thursday or all the Thursdays. You guys are very, 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 very kind and very patient and very supportive. In Noel, who's come here in the last one, he's like, even though he's just coming for the last, but he's very precious that he came at least. So he created the imprints for having that again and again. So it's very important that you continue studying the 8 verses again and again and again, right? So it's important that we do that. Deepa, you want to ask something?
I have a question, but it's from
Yes.
Tuesday, uh, what we talked about on Tuesday.
Okay.
So I think we were talking about someone being brutally violated, and it was the intention at the time or after being violated, what, that determines their karma. Was it that? I don't know if I'm saying it.
I don't know if I understand, but it's like the reason why the person is experience
Yes.
that abuse or whatever is because the person has created that cause, right? So the cause not necessarily needs to be the exactly same action, yes,
Mhm.
but is a cause that is kind of like has the potential to become that result, right? So then we need to understand in the context of what we talked about the four characteristics of the karma, and one of them is that things are like karma expands, right? So that means that maybe it was not that the person abused someone directly, but maybe they created something, or they've been doing many small little types of abuses, let's say like this, and then that created the result to be that kind of like bigger abuse first. And then the second thing is that the person that is so important for me to really highlight, and I think taking what Tao said, it's like it's not that the person is doing it out of stupidity or guilt. We shouldn't feel guilt or anything like that. It's not about that. It's because of our ignorance. We believed, if we created the cause to be abused, it's not because we are bad people, it's not because we are sinners, not because of that. It's because of our ignorance of really believing that that would bring us happiness and not suffer. It's just that. So that kind of like creates that idea of like, oh, if I then like mm, uproot, or if I just take out that ignorance from my mind, I don't create anymore the causes to experience that type of suffering, right? So that is also a good angle of seeing it that I like, is that if you understand that the reason why you are experiencing that suffering is because you created the causes, and the reason why you created the causes was because you were confused on how you wanted to be happy and how you wanted to not find suffering. Therefore, that means that you want to uproot that ignorance, right? So that is a kind of like a strong or beneficial way to think about it, but not in a way of guilt or feeling that we are like a sinner, bad person, or anything like that. All right?
So my actually what I was yeah, I got that. So thank you for clarifying that. Um, so the thing is the person's reaction. Uh, I mean, what if
The
like
person's, you mean the
then
person who is being abused?
yes, it was like their reaction to the abuse. Maybe they want to like later like stand up for themselves and
Yes.
work towards getting justice for themselves. So is that uh,
That is great if it is based on, of understanding that is of understanding of karma, let's call like this. Karma doesn't mean accepting whatever happened to you and just saying, oh, that's it, I deserved it. It's not like that. It's not about that. Karma is saying, oh, that happened because there was a cause. Right now, I have a choice in the present moment to check how I'm going to experience my future, right? Which is the way I'm going to like deal with that abuse is going to either create a cause for a future suffering or a future happiness, right? So that means that if I decide to go and kind of like whatever I decide to do, if it is based on like, oh, actually, I don't want this person who abused me, to kind of like have to experience that. Or I think that I don't want anyone to be able to experience what I am experiencing, right? So all of these things are coming from a compassionate mindset. So if you're creating these, you are creating a positive future experience, right? And then you can do whatever you're going to do. You even bring this person to jail, right? Right? So because you're thinking about also this person, because you don't want this person to create more suffering. Well, what I just discussed with Tal, right, is like, actually, if you can help that person, or what Lama Yeshe said, right? What Lama Yeshe said is like, if you understand karma, you don't want other people to engage with negative actions, right? So if you have that in mind, if you are really trying to put your mind into this, then you can do, yes, you do what you think it is best.
Okay.
Don't
Thank you.
think in the mundane way of justice. Think in the karmic way of justice. And the karmic way of justice is cause and effect. If you create a cause, you're going to have the result. So if you're creating the cause in your mind to act in whatever way towards the persons who abused you, it is positive, then the result is going to be positive. It doesn't matter the external result in the sense of this person going to jail or not going to jail. You don't, and if this person getting angry at you or not getting angry at you, you don't have that power. You don't have that control, right? It's about your mind. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Does it
So,
help?
yes, it does. Thank you. I would just really quick. I mean, so
Please, yes.
in a case like this, where is it? I don't know. I've heard of the concept of balancing karma. So perhaps, like, if the person who got violated retaliates in a, maybe in a, in a way that hurts the person who hurt them. So is that considered balancing karma, or like maybe in another life, or
There's
how?
no such thing as balancing karma with others. Balancing karma, there's only either exhaustion of karma or purification of karma.
Okay.
This is the only thing. And then there's only that. So that what it means, exhaustion of karma means the action experience. Like is experienced. Like for example, you get abused. So that karma is exhausted, right? In that moment. So that moment when that karma is being exhausted, when the abuse is happening, then you have the possibility of creating another possibility of experiencing more abuse, or creating an experience of compassion, love, kindness, patience, wisdom, whatever. And purification means you, before the result manifests, you burn, let's say like this, the potential for it to manifest, right? And for that, you need to develop regret, especially, and you need to do the remedy itself, chant one of the mantras, and then you need to do what we call the refraining, really no, don't create that mental state again in your mind. So there's no such concept of balancing karma, because then it's just an eye for an eye or an eye for a like a cheek, whatever you can say, you know. So in that way, it doesn't work so much. Does it make sense?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's important that we understand, and that I even said that today to Bob in another meeting we had, is like, it's very hard when we start to listen to Dharma, that is kind of like that sometimes some of the concepts that we are used to in our daily lives, they start to really become different. They don't work, right? And that idea of justice, let's say like this, right? And I'm not saying that justice doesn't work. I'm not saying that justice doesn't exist. I'm not saying that we should not strive for justice. But the way that justice might be seen it's more of a, of a punishment, or of a, and that, in a way, the punishment is already going to happen if we are creating a negative emotion. Right? If we are creating a negative intention in ourselves, the punishment is going to come. Either this life, future lives, the punishment is going to come. So that's why we say, when we see someone, abusing someone, we need to have compassion towards both. We need to have compassion towards the person who is being abused, and we need to do everything to stop that abuse from happening immediately, right? And we need to help that person to not develop the mind of revenge, the mind of, wanting to pay back and all of these, but actually understanding the way that they can benefit from that, to use, they exhausted a karma, they can purify, they can develop love, compassion, all of these positive mental states. And for the perpetrator, the person, the abuser, the abuser, because you need to actually see that the abuser just created a very strong seed in their minds, and they gonna, in some point, get that result. Does it make sense what I just said?
Yes.
Yes?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Tao, good? Yes? Okay. Okay, sweethearts. That is the idea of today before Bob's mind explodes. Yes, we're gonna help Bob. We're gonna create a positive karma by helping Bob's mind to not explode, not go like a fire, like zzz, like that kind of like a cartoon, like this. So let's dedicate. Let's not forget to dedicate, because dedication is so important. Dedication is almost like another motivation, as I like to say, another intention. It's like sealing the intention, and let's say like that. That's what it is. We are sealing the intention in the way that it, like, now that we listen to this, now that we contemplate, now that we talk, now that we really kind of like, had this incredible discussion today, and throughout these 4 months here together, let's make sure that we use all of these wisdom, all of these compassion, all of these methods, all of these, knowledge, whatever we learned, whatever insight, whatever benefit that we might have had from this place, from these, talks, from these questions, from this reasoning, from this thinking, contemplation, this meditation, all of that may be the causes for our own development of bodhicitta, so we can help others to develop their bodhicitta, right? That is what we really need to aspire more and more and more and more. And as I was saying, for us to do that, the more we do it, the more we kind of like, is our way to benefit now the entire world. Because if we try for others to develop their own bodhicitta, then there's going to be less anger, less conflicts, less wars, less, greed, so less, environmental issues, all of it, and all the hunger, all the poverty, everything is going to disappear if you think about it. So we really aspire for us to develop that mindset, that mind, more and more and more, and help others to develop that as well. So then we are contributing for a more peaceful, kind, loving world. So that is really our main wish. And then, of course, we really try to dedicate for the long and healthy lives of our teachers, because without them, as we were saying, without them, we don't have a path. They are the root, they are really what is guiding us towards being able to develop those mental states, showing us it's possible, inspiring us. So we really especially dedicate to the long and healthy life of the Dalai Lama, to continue being guiding us, and teaching really so many important teachings, and embodying those teachings, right? And in our case, we also dedicate for Lama Zopa Rinpoche to come back and to continue helping us and guiding us. But also, I would like you all to dedicate for ourselves and all other sentient beings to always find perfect Mahayana, perfect, bodhicitta teachers that teach bodhicitta. So we can all develop that mind. So let's really aspire for that, that we can find in our future lives, that all beings can find in their future lives, bodhicitta teachers, so we can develop that mind, continue developing now and in our future lives. And of course, that places like Thubten Kunga Ling to continue existing, not only in South Florida, but throughout the world, so people can benefit for those spaces, those teachings, those contemplations, those meditations, and those communities, okay? Of same like-minded people like us. And we can dedicate for all the people that we know that we was asked for us to pray, anyone who is suffering right now out of hunger, out of illness, sickness, everybody who passed away, I want to make a strong dedication because I had a couple, a friend of mine, that she was pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and she just lost the baby. So they are devastated. So may they really, 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 they be very, 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 receive all the love, compassion for ourselves, and may they be kind of like taken care of, in that time. And this little baby that didn't have a life, in this world, may they come back. And then when they come back as a human being, as a full human being, may they teach, they connect with the Dharma, meet the perfect teacher, and continue their path as well. Okay? So that's a strong. I'm being nosy and asking you guys to also dedicate for them, but you guys can dedicate for anyone in your lives as well. Okay, let's do that. So 1 minute of dedication. We're just gonna do one little prayer. Okay, just one little prayer, so we can pretend, so you guys can say that Cowden is a good monk, and then he did all the prayers, 800, 936, I think. Yes. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme due bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And the prayer for Rinpoche, for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's swift return. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pradiyaka Buddhas, victorious Lojong, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all objects of our refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wear the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the oceans, of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples like us. I put that one over there. Thank you very much.